friends. Welcome to the LeggLife podcast. My name is Adam.
My name is Sherry.
Sherry Beth, what episode is this?
126.
It is episode 126. And another way to read that is 12/6. Oh. December 6th. You might not know this. The date that the final capstone was put on the Washington Monument. Oh. The Washington Monument. Completed last year. No, I'm just kidding. I think that's right. I might have the year wrong. I definitely have I definitely have the date right. Mm-hmm. The year I might be off by 2 or 3 years.
2 or 3 years.
I think so. I might be off by 2 or 3 years.
All right,
you guys. So this is our last podcast in the month of May, and May,
which is weird.
Okay,
I don't know what's happening to this year. We're almost halfway through this year, and I feel like January was 857 years long.
But the rest of the year?
But the rest of, like, every other month, it's just like you barely blink and it's gone.
I do not understand how it's almost June.
I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, I agree with you. January was the longest month. January was longer than all of the rest of the months of this year combined.
Yeah.
It's so weird. So one thing about May that is an important thing is that May is Mental Health Awareness Month.
Yep.
And so we thought we would basically end the month by having a podcast that talks all about that. Now, here's the thing. We've talked a lot about mental health in lots of other podcasts.
Yeah.
We've talked about it in our vlogs. We've tried to be very honest about this topic, but we've never...
And our own state of being.
Which is in flux and changes. But we've never done a podcast, as far as we know, that was just specific to this topic of mental health.
I feel like y'all actually know our podcast better than we do. Like, we were both like, have we done one specifically on mental health? And we're like, no, I don't think so. After this airs, there's going to be no less than 7 people that are like, oh, no, you did this and this and this and this.
You guys did this 3 years ago in 11 days. Like, you guys really do know our stuff in our life more than we do.
It's fine.
But in this podcast, we're going to talk about kind of our own mental health journeys, things that we do to ensure mental health, and just kind of have an honest conversation around this. But before we jump into that, just kind of want to even look at sort of the the landscape about mental health, why I think this is such an important topic.
Yeah.
Sherry, growing up, was mental health something that, like, you heard talked about? Was it even a conversation?
No. Mental health was one of those things that it was kind of taboo, I think, to talk about.
Especially in, like, the church, like being raised in religious systems. Yeah.
Which I never really understood. If you break a bone, you're going to go see, like, a doctor.
Yeah.
But, like, mental health was like, oh, Jesus will fix you.
It seems like, and that was my experience largely with mental health in the church circles as well for a long time. It seems like recently, and when I say recently, I mean the last maybe decade or so, there are more conversations, there's more openness, people are more willing to talk about mental health, taking mental health days, which is more common now. I never heard that a decade ago. Mental
health day was like never a thing growing up.
What's interesting is that Mental Health Awareness Month, the month of May, has actually been around since 1949.
Yeah, you read that to me earlier, and I was shocked.
I was shocked by that as well, because it feels like the conversation around this, at least in the popular culture, has been more recent. But this month, kind of looking at this, has been around for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And the whole goal of the month is to raise awareness about mental health issues, reduce stigma that's associated with that. And before we get started, just kind of a definition about what mental health even is.
Right.
That I think is kind of helpful. And this is from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.gov. Mental health is a person's emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how people think, feel, and act. It helps them cope with stress, relate to others, and make choices. It says mental health is important at every stage of life, from childhood through adulthood. And the reality is that this, it is so prevalent. I think it always has been, but I think it's really good that we're getting, that we're breaking down the stigma when it comes to talking about this.
Yeah, I agree.
That no longer saying, like, I'm really battling anxiety or things like that. That used to be viewed as like, oh, you're so weak.
Yeah, it was a weakness, but I don't think that it's something you can't control. Like it's
It's something you can't control, but it's also so prevalent that we have to talk about this.
Yeah.
I mean, it is affecting, like, I mean, you guys, the numbers are insane over just depression alone. And remember, mental health it's like a diamond. There's so many different facets of this.
Right.
That are both diagnosed and undiagnosed.
Right.
But depression alone affects over 264 million people globally. Anxiety is the most common mental health disorder in the U.S., affecting over 40 million adults. And here, this is crazy. You ready for this? Between individuals between 10 and 34 years old, so kids through young adults in the United States, suicide, the second leading cause of death.
I was shocked at that. I think that if you had said aged 20 to 34, I would believe it more. But age 10 to have suicide as the second leading cause of death for 10-year-olds is...
Well, for that age, not necessarily just 10-year-olds, but for that whole age.
Like, I mean, for that whole age group, like, that's...
Here's what I'll say. It doesn't surprise me at all.
Oof.
It makes me really sad, but it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
And so I think that one of the things that's important to remember is that awareness always precedes action. Mm-hmm. So I think it's important that one of the first steps, or the first step, is that we understand that it's okay to have conversations about this stuff.
Yes.
It's okay to be honest about emotions and feelings and thoughts and where your mental state is at. That's okay to do that in safe spaces.
Yeah.
Because nothing changes until we break the stigma around this.
And I think that it's important to be honest with yourself as much as with others.
Okay, talk about that.
I think that for a long time, like, I have never officially been diagnosed with any kind of like anxiety, but I know when I'm having some kind of anxiety episode or attack or something. Like, I know it in my body. And I think that for a long time I ignored it, or was just like, well, you know, I've never been diagnosed with anything, so like I'm just making this up in my brain and I'm just gonna move on. But I don't think that that's healthy, and I don't think that it helped me at all.
Yeah.
And so I think that when, you know, I'm having like a highly anxious day or moment or whatever, it's really important for me, at least, to be honest with myself that that's what this is, and then to take steps to help myself out of it.
Tell me what steps to help yourself out of it looks like.
Well, okay, so I'm gonna bring up a specific example.
Okay.
Super Bowl Sunday.
Oh yeah, I know exactly what you're gonna talk about.
And this is where I feel like being honest with myself and then honest with you, and taking, you know, whatever steps were needed. So I woke up on Super Bowl Sunday, you know, excited to watch the Super Bowl, and
because of Taylor Swift.
Because of Taylor Swift, you know, Taylor Swift's boyfriend. You know, I don't know, like there was a buzzing in my body, and we sat down, and I was like, I can't do this. And so I ended up putting in AirPods, and I played on my Switch with a very low volume, but high enough that like the calming music in my game was kind of drowning out the Super Bowl, because I couldn't listen to the announcers and I couldn't listen to the screaming fans, and I couldn't do it.
It was sensory was just they were overloaded.
Yeah, and it's not like, I mean, it was just the two of us in our house. It's not like we were in a noisy bar. It's not like we had the TV at full volume, like, but it was just for whatever reason, those noises were just, my body was just, no ma'am.
And one of the things I think that's important, even as I'm listening to you talk about that I think is helpful to know, we all sort of need this mental health, like, how would I say it? Like almost like a tool bag.
Right.
Where I think that for most of us, for many of us, medication is one of the tools in the tool bag.
Yep.
Right? There are, for many of us, counseling and therapy are one of the tools, and we're going to talk about that a little later on. Mm-hmm. But also there's these other things that work sometimes.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's been helpful for me, and I know for you even hearing that story, is that every time you start to feel anxiety or even like depression comes on or other mental health struggles, you sort of have to you have to use whatever tool fits the job at the moment.
Yep.
And in that moment, what you needed was like AirPods to block out noise. Mm-hmm. You needed a switch to focus on something completely different.
Yep.
And you almost have to approach it as, what are the tools that I need for this specific mental health job that I'm working on right now?
Right. And I think it is also like, I think this is where it's, it's not anything you have control over. Like there wasn't any reason for me to be over like sensoried at that point.
It started from the moment you woke up.
Right.
Yeah.
And it just, I couldn't control it. It was just there. And so I could have pushed through it and then exhausted myself and probably broken down in tears about halfway through the Super Bowl.
That's right.
Or I could still continue to sit next to my husband while he watched the game, and I just played my calming game.
And so this is where it's really important, if you're in a relationship, not just romantic, but if you're with friends, if you're kind of with somebody and this starts to happen, it's really important to be honest with the people you're with.
Yep.
Hey, this is what I'm experiencing right now. Mm-hmm. And here is what my plan is. Here's what I'm going to do. And this is what I need from you.
Yeah.
Right. To be honest with that and say, like, this is what I need from you in that. And first of all, if you're with people who will make fun of you for that, or who will not care well for you, get new people.
Get a new tribe.
I'm just going to be honest with you.
Right.
Like, get people who care well for you, which means caring well for your mental health.
Yeah.
And so in that, like, I could have been like, no, we're watching the Super Bowl.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Like, gearing up for this. We
Right.
have our stuff. Like, this is what we're doing.
That's right. Like, don't play your Switch. Like, we're going to watch this together.
Right.
Like, how harsh is that, though?
Right.
And so I think that's really important. Now, I want to talk a little bit about something I touched on earlier, like therapy and counseling. Mm-hmm. So Sherry and I are both very, very pro therapy, pro counseling.
Correct.
We have and do see therapists, see counselors. We have friends who are those professionally that we get to rely on. We have other like paid professionals that we get to rely on. I believe in this so much that all of my staff at work, many of you will know I work in the anti-trafficking space. If you are going to be on my team, you have to be in regular counseling because the weight of the work that we do requires that you have somebody else to help carry that load. It is too heavy for you to carry.
Right.
Now, I'm going to be very honest. I believe that the world we live in today is so traumatized that there is so much hurt and pain just simply from existing in this world.
Correct.
That all of us need that.
Yeah.
I don't think I have ever met a single person in my life that I don't believe would benefit from counseling or from therapy.
And again, if you hurt yourself or if you were sick, you would go to see a medical professional.
100%.
Why would you not go see a mental health professional to help your mental health? Like it's never made sense to me, like how taboo it is.
And the reality is, in the same way with like medical doctors, one of the most important things is to be preventative and proactive, right? Mm-hmm. We're not just waiting until we have these giant medical issues and crises in order to see a doctor. But that's normally what we do with mental health.
Right.
We wait until we've had full-on breakdowns. We wait until we have ruined marriages, or we've ruined our lives, or we have burned out, or we have whatever before we seek the help that we need.
Right.
When I believe that most of us, just as we see medical doctors for preventative health measures, should also be seeing counselors and therapists for preventative mental health measures, because we live in a world that is broken and heavy and traumatic, and we need help understanding how to process that stuff. Every
single person I've ever met has childhood trauma, even if you grew up in a perfectly idyllic family and town and whatever. You have childhood trauma and you have things you need to work through. And then every single adult has adult trauma. Like
100%.
I mean, it's just like there are things that you need a professional to help you navigate.
And I want to talk through that a little bit. Because I understand that finding a counselor and finding a therapist can be very difficult. How do you even start? There are so many different specialties. There's just all that kind of stuff. But a couple kind of therapy pro tips. First of all, fortunately, we live in a world where it is easier than ever to find somebody. Even online. So BetterHelp is a resource online.
Yep, I
and
was just going to say that.
It has been kind of hit or miss with certain people. Sometimes you find a good counselor, sometimes you don't. But here's what I'll say. That is also true in person.
Yeah.
Like, you don't necessarily click with the first one. Sometimes it takes a few. But also, I'm going to make the comparison again to physical health.
Medical doctors. Yeah, you don't always walk into a medical clinic and find the perfect doctor for you.
But sometimes, after a while, when something happens, you do and it clicks.
Yep.
And so this is as worth putting in the effort to find your therapist, your counselor, as it is your doctor.
Yep.
And so try that, even if it's starting with something online like BetterHelp, whatever it looks like. But then the other thing I want to challenge people on, I've done a lot of counseling with people. I'm not a professional counselor. To be honest with you, there are some thoughts that I'm having moving forward about possible, not necessarily career changes, but additional things to do on the side that are in this space that I'm excited about. But one of the things that I have seen, both in counseling I've done and in friends that have gone to counseling, is you only get out of it what you are willing to put into it and how authentic and honest you are willing to be.
Yeah.
If you are not willing to walk into a counselor and a therapist's office and take an honest look in the mirror and see things about yourself that may not be the best to look at, you're probably not going to get anything out of it.
And I'm gonna, again, keep going back to that medical doctor thing. If you go into your medical doctor and say, everything is perfectly fine, doc.
Nothing hurts, nothing's painful, I feel great, there's nothing wrong. But along with that, I had a friend of mine who gave me kind of a tip. This was several years ago. She's a professional counselor, and we were talking about this, like how when somebody shows up and they don't necessarily think anything is wrong with them, right. Like they just think that they're great and they don't even need therapy or counseling. One of the questions that she would ask is she would start to say, what do other people say that it's like to be with you? What do other people say that you do or you are like? And she was giving me an example of a mom who was like, well, my kids say this about me, but that's not true. And oh, my friends say this about me, but that's not true. and she would say like, well,
let's unpack that a little bit.
But what if it is?
Right.
What if that is true? Let's talk about this. And then this lady had to show up honestly and sort of like see things in the mirror. She's like, oh my God, I didn't know that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I had no idea that's what it was like to be with me.
Right.
Like you have to be willing to show up honestly.
Yeah. Which is hard.
It's hard for all of us.
Yeah.
Who wants to do that? That sounds horrible.
Right.
But the goal is better.
Yeah.
The goal is like better mental health. The goal is a better existence. The goal is a better life. And I just think that most of us go through life carrying such a heavy mental load from both what we've gone through and what we were going through, things that we've done and things that were done to us, that we need help carrying that.
Yeah.
It's just so important.
Yeah.
So we, huge fans when it comes to counseling and therapy.
Yep.
Really do recommend you get the help you need. For me, Sherry talked a lot about, and I think for you, one of the biggest mental health battles is anxiety.
Anxiety. I'm naturally an overthinker. Mm-hmm. I'm naturally a worrier. I think I'm naturally depressed.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of my natural state. And I think part of that is that I see all sides of everything. And that includes all of the bad. And I can spiral very easily into the bad.
Those are very similar to mine. I feel anxiety in situations, but I wouldn't say that I'm naturally an anxious person. I do think that depression is one for me. And the thing for me is that it just happens so quickly. I am not naturally a depressed person. I mean, you know that.
Right.
But the thing I've noticed for me is that it goes from very light, very normal to very dark very quickly.
Yeah.
It's like that switch is just like, boom. Like,
Yeah.
it's just there. And so I've had to notice that for myself and even recognize the signs about like, oh my God, like this is here.
Yeah.
Because
there's no like, oh, I can feel myself slipping, which is where I'm at.
No,
like,
I'm just
I can
there.
feel myself slipping, and then I know that I'm gonna need some help getting back out of this.
See, that's right. And for me, I'm just there.
You're just there.
I'm
Yeah.
just there. It's just instant. And then the other thing I think for me is mental health is just carrying the physical load. And this is where like counseling and therapy comes into play. Carrying the physical load of just the brokenness of the world and life and stuff that I deal with through work and that kind of stuff.
And so you see a much darker side of the world than most people do.
Sure, absolutely. And I need a place to process that and talk about that. Not necessarily understand that, because I don't know that there is an understanding of that.
Right.
But there is I need to be able to discuss this in a safe place and set this down for a moment and maybe not pick it all back up.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's been really helpful for me. And I think it's, again, it's the reason that like, if you're going to be on my team at work, you have to be, this is part of it.
Yeah.
We have a chaplain for our team that at any time they can call, they can Zoom, they can spend time with. There's professional counselors and therapists because we just need this stuff.
Yeah.
So lots of other tools in our tool belt. Some things like self-care and work-life balance. We've talked about those before on the podcast. Self-care stuff for you normally looks like what?
Well, it's AirPods at a game, or it's a book, or it's zoning out to a TV show or a movie, or it's, those are all kind of individual things that I will do, but it's hanging out with friends. It's putting down whatever burden I'm carrying and going out and having some drinks with friends.
Yeah, I think for me, it's a lot of those things. It's film photography. For me, nature and driving are forms of self-care. For me, a float tank is a form of self-care. One of the dangers, though, and I've discussed this, I think on a podcast we talked about when we were talking about like Sabbath rest or like life balance. I actually don't love the term self-care.
Right.
Well, here's the thing. I actually like the term self-care if used in a healthy way.
Right.
For me, what self-care has come to mean in culture is largely you work until you're at the point of burnout and exhaustion. And it's like, oh, we have a self-care initiative at work, so now I'm going to go take a bath, or I'm going to have one spa day.
I'm going to light some candles and take a bath, and then I'll be all better.
And I'm supposed to be all better. But what normally happens is that we are so burnt out and so run ragged that we do just enough to get a little bit of life and energy left, and then we go back to doing like the craziness that got us there in the first place.
Right.
That's why, to me, the balance between work and life is actually so important in this. Because most of the time what's needed isn't self-care. It's actually a change in the balance of work and of life and of what we're doing and what we're giving our energy to and how much energy we're giving to it.
The full rhythm. Yep.
Yeah. It's like you look at your life and you realize that, the way my life is set up, the way my job is set up, the way my career or even industry is set up is that I will always get back to this point of burnout, of exhaustion, of destruction, of whatever it is. And there's so much, think of the mental health issues in that. For me, a lot of my mental health issues stem from seasons of life when I really did such damage to myself because of burnout and exhaustion.
Yeah.
And a lot of my insecurities stem from that kind of stuff. And so I think, to be honest and say, what would life look like? What kind of life would help me have a better, not just balance between work and life, but what would be best for my mental health? What would need to change in my current life? Now, reality aside, whether it's possible aside, what would need to change in your life for you to say, the anxiety that I experience every day that is so crippling is less or is gone. The depression that I experience every day that is so crippling is less or it's gone. And ask yourself those honest questions like, if this changed, would my mental health be better?
Right.
Again, going back to physical health, that's what we've had to do with diet.
Right.
We looked at ourselves, and we still look at ourselves, and we say, there's a lot of unhealth in our life. Well, guess what? we have to change some shit then.
Right.
You know what I
We
mean?
can't just keep doing what we've been doing and expect things to change.
That's right. And you know what? The change sucks.
The change is not fun.
It's not fun at all. But the reality is that what we will gain long term will be worth it and better.
Yep.
Oh,
And I think that there is also, I think even, I don't know. I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. So y'all know, like, I changed jobs a little over a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that even if I was being fully honest with myself a year and a half ago, I don't think that I would have pointed to my job as a point of anxiety for me.
Mm-hmm. It wasn't a negative. You didn't think it was a negative when it came to like your mental health.
Right. Until I was out of it. And I don't know how to like go back and, you know what I mean? Like, I think that even if I was honest trying to be honest with myself, I don't think that I would have pointed at that as a point of anxiety, but getting out of it, it was. And so sometimes it's making a change because you know you're not in a healthy place, and it's maybe just changing something to see if that's it. And maybe it's not, but maybe it is.
Yeah, I actually think that...
I don't know how I'm like trying to phrase this, but like...
No, but I think that like jobs and relationships and like what are the biggest things of life that contribute to how we are?
Right.
It's those things that we spend so much time doing, right? It's schooling, it's relationships, it's jobs, it's friendships, it's all of those things. And I do think a lot of times we are not necessarily honest about the negative effect that those people we're spending time with, those people we're doing life with, those activities we're involved with are having a negative effect on our mental health.
That college major.
The college major.
Right.
Like all of that stuff.
Right.
That it's like, oh, well, I've got to get this. Oh, by the way, it might kill me or I might kill myself. And that's not even like a joke.
Right.
Like that's real.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, there's a reason that I stopped when I did. And it's because I was completely burnt out.
yeah. And so I think it's just taking an honest look at life.
Yeah.
And really taking an inventory. And again, I love the illustration of the mirror. It's holding up a mirror and saying, for 1 second, I'm going to set aside what I think to be true about myself. And I want to look and see what is true about myself. Yeah. Like, how am I doing?
Good and bad.
Yeah, it's like, oh, that relationship that ended, like, how am I doing about that? Like, have I grieved that? When I think about that, are there still emotions at the surface? If there are, that says something.
Right.
When I think about, trauma from childhood or like interactions with parents, have I processed that stuff in a healthy way? Or have I just been like, well, bury that down. Let's not deal with that.
Right.
It's taking an honest look in the mirror and then acting on what it is you see.
Yeah.
And not being afraid of that, like not being ashamed of that, saying, you know what, like I'm going through some stuff right now and I'm dealing with some stuff that I have not looked at in 20, 30, 40, 50 years, 5 years.
Right.
And I need to prioritize myself and my mental health. And so I'm not going to be hanging out with you guys as much because, frankly, I'm not going to have as much money because now I'm spending hundreds of dollars a month on counseling.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like sometimes that's it.
Sometimes you just need to do that. And I think that another point of mental health that people don't talk about often is how it affects your physical health as well.
Oh my gosh.
I have also noticed that I am physically healthier because I am mentally healthier.
Without question.
Like there are things that your body carries that you don't even know. And if you work through your mental health issues, a lot of those physical issues will also go away.
One of my favorite books, and I'll just throw this out there as a resource for anybody listening. It's a book called Body Keeps the Score, and essentially talks about the way that your body stores and remembers trauma, and the way that as you go through life and experience things, the way that is stored in the body. It is fascinating. It is so fascinating.
Terrifying.
And terrifying. And what's interesting is that and I've read the book a number of times, and I remember the first time after I read the book, it was just a little while after a friend came to me and was like, I'm just feeling like my body is feeling different. And I'm also really starting to think about and process a lot of stuff that happened to me growing up that I have not wanted to look at. And she was talking about the physical response to emotional things that were coming out and like the tie between that. But you're exactly right. Like your body keeps the score of what you've gone through.
Right.
Both good and bad.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. It's a lot.
It is a lot. But here's the thing. It's important to talk about. And if you are listening to this and there is like most of us, this has maybe been a taboo topic, or it's been a topic that, you know what, one of the things I think that is happening in today's culture with almost like mental health becoming cool is I think that people will say, oh, happy mental health month. Like this is, mental health, and we'll post on our stories. And then, but we will not be honest.
Right.
We will not pick up the mirror and be honest about ourselves. Yeah. We will wave the flag of mental health importance and awareness, but we won't be willing to do the work for ourselves.
Right.
You are worth it. Like you matter and you are loved, and you being healthy in this way is worth the hard work that it will take.
And every single person that is listening to this podcast has been through trauma.
Absolutely.
And you must work through it.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I literally have never met anybody in my entire life that I don't think would benefit from counseling and therapy.
Correct.
I will say this, there will never be a point in my life that I will not see somebody, because life is traumatic.
Yep.
We live in read the frickin' newspaper.
I don't read the newspaper, and I still need help.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. Is that
I choose to ignore all of that stuff, and I still have to work through all of my shit.
Exactly. That's how bad it is.
Right.
And so, is there a place for biblical counseling if you're a person of faith? 100%.
Absolutely.
I think that's important. But I think that is a piece to the puzzle.
Yeah.
And there is also a need for professional counseling.
Yeah.
There's also a need for there's lots of different things out there. So, friends, this is something that matters to us, because the reality is that we have seen the negative impact in our own lives when we have not cared well for ourselves.
Yep.
And here's the thing. I want you to hear this. We have not arrived, and we are not fixed.
And we never will be.
That's right. And this is going to be a constant battle that we are both committed to fighting as individuals and together for the rest of our life.
I don't think like Adam said, there's never going to come a time where we're just like, no, we're good.
We're fixed. There's no completion to mental health.
Right.
And that's the thing, is that there's no like, oh, I graduated.
Right.
No, because you walk out the door and like you get a text that your best friends are getting divorced, or that like somebody else died, or that, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, oh, something else traumatic happened. Great. Guess I'm not graduated.
And turn around and go back in.
And we're back in. And so I don't know. I just want you all to know that you are worth it.
Yes.
And if, you know what, sometimes we find ourselves in circles and situations where it's like, man, I get that, but like I got nobody to talk to about this stuff. I don't even know what the first steps are.
Right.
If you're listening and you have no idea what the first step is, send us an email. LeggLife@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Go check out BetterHelp.com.
Yep.
It is online counseling and therapy. And you know what? Yeah, it might cost a little bit of money, but you are worth it.
Yeah.
If you're somebody who deals with like suicidal ideations, or you're in a place where, man, depression's getting worse and worse, and I'm not sure I won't make that choice.
Yeah.
You guys, there's like 24-hour helplines out there. 1-800-273-8255, or like the crisis text line. You can text the word HOME, HOME, to 741-741 and get immediate help 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yep.
You are worth it.
Yeah.
And we need you here. Like, that's the thing, is that we need you. The world needs you.
You were created for a purpose.
And
there's nobody else that can serve your purpose.
Yeah, and we need that.
Yeah.
Like, we need that. We need you. And more than that, we want you here.
Yeah.
Like, the world's better because you are you, and it's even better when you are a healthy version of you.
Yes.
And so I'm saying this to us and to all of you, whatever the steps needed to take to become a healthier mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically version of yourself, that is ultimately what is in your best interest and the best interest of all of humanity.
Correct.
You guys, we love you. I don't have a question today because I think this is kind of a personal reflection, but here's my challenge. Pick up the mirror. Take an honest look at yourself. Take an honest look at your mental health, the trauma you've experienced, the painful things you have gone through and are going through. And just say, what do I need when it comes to help? Am I getting the help that I need? If the answer to that is no, what would a first step in that be?
Yeah.
I'm not saying fix it tomorrow, but what would like one little step toward health be?
Yeah.
Maybe it's talking to a friend. Maybe it's sending us an email. Maybe it is logging onto a website and looking for help. But take one step toward healthier mental health.
Yes. It's worth it.
Yeah, and you're worth it.
Yeah.
Friends, we love you so much. So thankful that you let us talk to you about lighthearted things like cruise vacations and all the other crazy topics we've talked about, as well as things that carry a little bit more weight like this.
Yep.
So you guys, we love you. We're so thankful for all of you, and we really do mean that.
Yes.
We're thankful you're a part of this community and you're part of this world, and we will see you next week on the LeggLife podcast.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.